Hey, what's up everyone? I'm the Burning Baron, but you could just call me the Baron. And I'm here with part 1 of a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass ranking system. I'm pretty sure a lot of other people have started doing this or have been doing it over the course of the DLC. I myself wanted to wait until everything was released, but now that we are into the 5th wave, I've decided for 2 reasons that I would start now, and I would do it in 2 parts. 2 parts mainly because it would be very long if I were to do all 48 tracks at the same time. So I believe splitting them up into the first 3 waves versus the last 3 waves would work a lot better. It would, first off, for the first 3 waves, I think my opinions are pretty set in stone. So it'll be easy to rank them. And at this point, with only 8 tracks left, I don't think my opinions are going to change all that much. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start ranking all of the Booster Course Pass tracks by my personal opinion, obviously. So I would like to say there is a bit of a criteria for this. So I will be ranking the courses beyond just how much I personally like them. I'm going to try to rank them out of 5 in 3 different categories. I'm going to rank them based on their visual appearance, which is, I guess you could say largely their graphics and their visuals, like how good are the textures, how good does it look. Obviously speaking, this overall category is going to be hindered a lot by the fact that a lot of these, if not all of them, are almost directly ported from Tour. But because more recent tracks have been doing a little bit better to visually look like they weren't just pulled from a mobile game, I think there is a little bit more to say about each and every track. So I'm going to try my best to be as fair as possible with that, but the overall visual appeal, you know what I mean. Like, again, it's not just the visuals and the textures, it's all like how all of it comes together and looks as a whole. So visuals are going to be one category. Gameplay is going to be another category. How well does the track play? Like, I know since these are all being pulled from Tour, we are basically ranking them based on how they changed in Tour. So it's largely based on that, obviously. So yeah, how well does the track play? How much fun is it? That's going to be its own category. And personally speaking, this one was one I couldn't really let go, even though it's not a huge contributing factor. The music is, to me, a huge part of Mario Kart tracks. A lot of my favorites tend to have some of my favorite songs in them, so I have no shame in admitting that I do pick a lot of my favorites based on their music. So how much does the music just rock? How much do I love it? Does the remix sound good? That's going to be a huge one. So all 3 of those are going to be a ranking out of 5, but they don't necessarily mean that they're going to place higher. Like, a track that I think is really good could still end up in the A rank, even if a track in the S rank might have lower rankings. Because again, all of this is a lot of this is also based on how much I personally like the track as a whole. How much did I think it improved in its transition over from Tour to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? And yeah, it's a lot of, and since a lot of these are returning, like all of them are returning, a large portion of it is also probably going to be my nostalgia for several tracks. I'm going to try my best to not let that cloud my judgment too much. Otherwise, obviously, a lot of the Super Circuit or the N64 tracks would dominate in places where I don't think they should dominate. So for this video, I'm just going to go ahead and cover the first 3 waves. As you can see on my screen here, I have a tier list from S to E. S being the tracks that I think are the really good tracks. These are my personal favorites on the entire DLC, whether they have basically it would naturally be a collaboration of all 3 groups being a really high score. And then you've got the E rank, which is for tracks that I just think blow it in this DLC. They either shouldn't be here or their changes were not for the best. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start. And I'm going to go in order from cups. So we're going to be starting with Paris Promenade from Mario Kart Tour. So Paris Promenade was the first track of the Golden Dash Cup, obviously. And it was, as the first tour track, it was when we saw the tour tracks coming back and they said that the tour tracks would play a little bit differently, that obviously got a lot of people thinking, what exactly do they mean by that? We know that Tour has at least 3 routes for every single city track, so a lot of, I guess my biggest question was, how are they going to incorporate this? Is it just going to be like one route? Is it going to be one route per lap? And to a degree, that second one was kind of what they did for several tracks. Paris Promenade is interestingly unique in the fact that the first 2 laps are completely the same. Paris Promenade offered the most amount of freedom for its first 2 laps, allowing you to go in different directions that, well, not really all that special. I mean, the first circular area around the giant arc, you could either go one way, you can go left, you can go right, or you can go right through the center if you had a mushroom. It wasn't until you reached the Eiffel Tower that you were able to choose between either going directly under the Eiffel Tower or hanging a left and going towards a side path that ultimately would still lead to the roundabout with the giant piranha plant in the middle. But overall, they did give you a few options, even if they don't really mean you're going to get ahead or not. It wasn't until the final lap where things started to change up, and you would be directed to the right, going along what was basically the start of the reverse version of Paris Promenade 2, which then drove you all the way in reverse, and then you would just go along right down to the Eiffel Tower, glide right past the Jet Large Fountain and back onto the streets, where it would eventually lead back to the finish line. So the gameplay was relatively interesting, and for being the first one to really change up the dynamics of races, I thought that was pretty cool. So I think in terms of its gameplay, I think I would have to give it a 4 out of 5, because while a lot of the different routes didn't really make a lot of difference, it was really interesting to see that concept for the first time, and incorporating the reverse route was pretty cool. And so moving on, as for the visuals, I think this one's going to be a very easy one. All the Wave 1 tracks are going to be like this, because Wave 1 was kind of notorious for really showcasing that they didn't bother upgrading the visuals very much. None of the Wave 1 tracks' visual textures, overall visuals really stood out. And I think the one thing about Paris Promenade is that it is going to get the benefit of the doubt for being a city track. The city tracks, even in the modern waves, all kind of look largely the same. Paris Promenade's distractions obviously come from its grass and its trees, but the buildings overall didn't look too bad. The Eiffel Tower didn't look too bad. A lot of the more non-natural details did look a little better. Still, I think overall I would have to give the visuals on this a 3 out of 5, because again, it's a Wave 1 track. It doesn't really stand out too much, and well, yeah, that's really all there is. As for the music, well, Paris Promenade really does capture the Paris feel. I think it fits very well. I'm not really too huge on it. On top of that, it doesn't really sound too much different compared to Mario Kart Tour. So I think personally I would give the music a 2 out of 5 as well. And I think overall, I'm going to put Paris Promenade in the C tier. I don't think it really climbs up any higher, but I don't think it's fair to say that it goes any lower, because the gameplay does carry this track a lot. While I did say the textures aren't much, I do think that the Paris, the overall environment of Paris Promenade is pretty good. I do enjoy it. Is it really one of Tour's strongest tracks? I wouldn't say so. It was the third Nitro City track to be released, so it is going to suffer from that early game syndrome where it's just a lot of the later tracks just show it up really well. So I'm going to be even, and I'm going to put it in the C tier, which I think to me is not the tier I dislike. I think it's more or less the tier that I just don't have too much of an opinion on. Alright, so next track is Toad Circuit, and I don't think I need to say too much. I've made it very clear, whether it be on this channel or whether it's been elsewhere, Toad Circuit is the weakest track in this entire DLC. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is going to be the first and only track to hit the E tier. Toad Circuit does nothing interesting for this DLC. So we're going to start with the gameplay. It is a bog standard opening Mushroom Cup course. I don't think they could have gone any more boring than with Toad Circuit. I mean, yes, they could have. They could have put SNES Mario Circuit 1, and I think that arguably would have been the only thing that would have been worse than Toad Circuit. But I'm sorry to anybody who really likes this track, because I myself don't even dislike it. It's the context of the booster course path that I think Toad Circuit is just not the best pick for. Out of all the 3DS Mushroom Cup courses, I wouldn't have picked any of them, any other ones really, but Shy Guy Bazaar probably would have been a way better option than just Toad Circuit. It is very simple. It just got nothing, and especially considering this is DLC, where a lot of the tracks are notable in one way or another. Toad Circuit just does not stand out at all. So I think the gameplay, for me personally, it's just going to have to be a 1 out of 5. It just does not... It does not compare to any other track. Even other Mushroom Cup courses that reappeared in the Booster Course Pass still felt better than this. Visually, well, okay, there's no hiding it. This is easily the worst case scenario of we didn't bother to upgrade the visuals. Everything, and I almost repeat, everything visually just looks like it was pulled right from Tour with just a little bit better lighting and maybe some different colors. The grass looks like paint you can smear off with your finger. The sand looks like it's paint that you can smear off with your finger. Like, all the track details just look like they're like painted plasticine or something. I'd say the only thing Toad Circuit ever had going for it was the giant toad balloons, which I thought were really cute because I do still like Toad as a character. But again, everything about Toad Circuit just does not compare. Even the music, which, again, it doesn't even sound too much different. They didn't really do too much. It does sound a little bit better than in Mario Kart 7 and in Mario Kart Tour, but I still don't think it climbs too much. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think Toad Circuit is just a 1 out of 5 across the board. Again, I'm sorry if anybody really does like Toad Circuit, but I myself just don't think it belongs here. I would have taken Peach Circuit over this. I would have taken Shy Guy Bazaar over this. Again, I think the only track I think would have been worse was Mario Circuit 1, but overall, I just can't see Toad Circuit being anything more special than that. Moving on, we are going to move to N64 Choco Mountain. And this is, I'd wager, probably one of the stronger courses in Wave 1. And that might sound a little bit nostalgia biased because Mario Kart 64 was my very first Mario Kart game. So obviously a lot of Nintendo 64 tracks get special passes from me, but I'm still going to be fair. And personally speaking, I think Choco Mountain is a pretty B tier track. Gameplay wise, taking from Mario Kart Tour's various changes, the giant mountain section has been extended to be a little bit more cavernous as opposed to the original and the DS versions where it was just a giant mountain. It almost, I'm going to be real, has anybody else thought about this? But the giant mountain opening almost kind of looks like Donkey Kong in its shape. At least with like especially N64 Donkey Kong with the pointed head. But more on to the point, they extended that tunnel to go much past where it was, and it goes around to where the straightaway leading to the rock walls with the falling boulders. So it is a cavern. It's a much more interesting cavern with some crystals inside, and I personally thought that looked really cool. It exits out with a gliding ramp, which is over now a ravine as opposed to just a large straightaway, which honestly I actually really enjoyed. I think, I'm not entirely sure if I like this more than the original because again, it also was shortened and compressed a lot, which you'll hear me talk about a lot. I'm not too huge on, but overall, I wager that the gameplay is, you know what, I don't even know if I want to put it above Paris Prama because the tour tracks do have a lot of differences, but rating a gameplay on the older tracks that don't change their layouts nearly as much might be a little bit hard. I'm actually still going to go ahead and give it a 4 out of 10 on the gameplay because Choco Mountain is still a very fun track. Avoiding all the boulders at the end, the new gliding ramp, Overall, the gameplay was really, really fun, and it still is. It does keep a lot of its original shape, which I can always respect. So I'm going to solidly give it a 4 out of 10 on its gameplay. Visually, okay, so yeah, as for a Wave 1 track, it doesn't really stand out, and especially considering it's a mountainy track, it's going to suffer a lot from bad visuals. I think if we're going to talk about the bad visuals of anything, rock walls and grass tend to be the worst offenders to this. So unfortunately, visually, it's going to be bogged down a bit. But I will say that some of the textures, especially on the multi-shaded rock walls, especially near the end, and the track's dirt road, do look a lot better when compared to other Wave 1 tracks. So I'd say the visuals are probably maybe a 2 or a 3, probably a 3 in this case. Plain rock walls really don't look great. I will say, like, it's cool that they had all the dead trees hanging over the ravine, especially, again, when you compare it to the original. The original was very enclosed. Like, it felt like the original was like a walled-off rock road along the whole path. You didn't really get to see a lot of the open mountain. Not like this version where they open up a lot, especially at the very beginning. There is a giant cliff edge where you can just peer off into the misty background. It's not much to look at, but giving you a little bit more to look at than just rock walls was pretty cool. Same with the gliding ravine. You can see a lot of the outer area, and you can see a lot of dead trees just kind of growing off both sides of the rocky mountainous walls, so I think it was really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and give the visuals a 3 out of 5, because Choco Mountain's tour rendition really does give a lot more to look at as opposed to just rock walls. The cavern especially is very nice to look at, while it definitely suffers in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe from looking like they're just plasticine floors, like it's like the off-road just looked like plasticine, like laid out on a canvas. The crystals look really nice, the road looks really nice, some of the rock walls don't look too bad, so I think Choco Mountain definitely does climb up a little bit higher than most other Wave 1 tracks. As for the music, I loved how it gave a much more fast-paced western-y feel to it. I think the music is going to be a 4 out of 10 as well, because it just sounds really cool. The banjo, the harmonica, like all the western feel to it. Even though this track isn't even a western-styled track, I think the music remix was really suiting. So I'm going to go ahead and slap this bad boy in the B tier and call it that. It's solid for a Wave 1 track. Alright, moving on to a largely fan favorite track. We have Wii Coconut Mall. I don't think I can go a single Mario Kart Wii discussion without people telling me how much of a great track this is. So, time for some disappointment. I'm not one of those people. I never really cared for Coconut Mall. In Mario Kart 7 and Mario Kart Wii, it never stood out. At one point, I really did decide that this probably was my least favorite Mario Kart Wii track. It is not my least favorite anymore. I can think of at least 2 others that I don't really like nearly as much. But for me personally, Coconut Mall is not as strong as people say. It's not for me. I'm not going to let the fact that it's a meme sell me, because I think that's a big portion of this. People just sit there and say it's a meme, so it's got to be good. It's not. It's interesting, it's cool. Is it my favorite? No, not by Wii standards, not by 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass standards. However, I am still going to be fair. I'm going to rank it after I get into everything, and I'm going to start with the visuals. I think this is the best Coconut Mall has ever looked. In Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 7, I think what was stopping me from really... Well, there were a few things stopping me, but the visual aspects of Mario Kart 7 and Mario Kart Wii did not flesh out nearly as much. I thought that the color palettes for the flooring just did not stand out. I didn't, like, it was an okay concept, but I think the visuals did not catch my attention very well. I can safely say that its appearance in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and in Mario Kart Tour have really helped that. I think the new color scheme for the interior of the mall really helps it. All the new little details, like the mosaic Super Mario Bros. Like style landscape on the staircase leading to the open garden section, I guess, the open area. That was really cool. But I think the orange color scheme really helps it a lot. I know there are a lot of small details people were like making a huge deal about, like how the escalators are just conveyor belts. I can't see how that's a big problem. I don't care. If this is they're just reusing all the same all the same assets that they had access to, and I think that conveyor belts were just a lot easier. Who cares? Who knows? Personally speaking, that doesn't bother me, but the fact that they are labeled with the colored arrows helps bring out a lot of the color of the track. So like you got the orange and the green, you got the overall, sorry, not the orange, the red and the green for the arrows, you got the overall orange look. I just think that Coconut Mall, especially with the vibrant blue sky, I'm looking at the little screenshot here, I think that overall it just looks so much better. Obviously speaking, like the trees just do not stand out, like they're pretty bog, like they're tour trees, no doubt about that. But I think the visuals are a solid 4 out of 10 or 4 out of 5 here, and I think that's a huge step up. Gameplay wise, it really doesn't change too much from any other iteration of the track. But overall, I'm gonna say I have about as much fun on this version as I do on any other version. Another huge complaint that people had were the cars, which again, I don't see a big problem with. Remember, this was a flower cup course. This wasn't supposed to be that hard. Whether the cars moved back and forth or swerved around doesn't really matter to me, because you can still just avoid them. Like, I guess maybe that's just like I feel like I'm good enough at Mario Kart, and for me, hitting the cars wasn't that big of a deal. So them swerving around back and forth, it doesn't really matter to me. They're obstacles either way. You can drive around them. You know what? I don't even really know how to keep talking about that. Really, it never bothered me. Maybe it's because I never really cared much for the course, but the cars moving didn't bother me. Who's in the cars never bothered me. They were me's back then. They're Shy Guys now. It makes sense because Nintendo hasn't really been putting central focus on their Mii's anymore, especially in Mario games. Like, sure, they got their big moment in Mario Kart Tour as returning characters, but in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mii's really did feel more like an afterthought. As in, like, yeah, they're just there. They're just there as an option. They have their unique little racing suits, but my opinion on the Mii's and the fact that they have their racing helmets just kind of discourages me from using them. But in any case, the visuals, I think, overall... Oh, sorry, I'm not talking about the visuals. I'm talking about the gameplay. The gameplay overall does not change very much from the different versions. It's still the same track. They didn't change anything in Mario Kart Tour in terms of its layout or its gameplay. So I think this is probably just going to be a 2 or... I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10 because overall, it's a mall. It's really cool. It's cool that you're driving through it. But again, overall, the track just doesn't do it for me. As for the music, who cares if it's a meme? I just don't care that it's a meme. I'm sorry. I know I'm saying a lot of bad things, and I'm really reinstating that Coconut Mall is not my favorite, and I'm gonna try to be fair overall. When I rank it, I will give my final thoughts. The music, don't care about. Never really did. I'm just gonna give it a 2 out of 5 because it's better than its previous renditions, but it still just doesn't hit for me. It's catchy, but there are so many music tracks that are better. Overall, though, despite everything I've said, I'm going to place this in the B tier. I think it deserves it. This is still the best version of Coconut Mall I think we've ever gotten. All the new additions that were added in Mario Kart 7 really helped. The gliding ramps on the leading out to the mall, that was pretty fun. And the overall visual appeal just strongly improves this track from its first 2 appearances. So I still don't care for the track much. That's why I'm not going to put it any higher than B. But I think the improvements that this track has gone through really deserve that it doesn't deserve to be anything lower than B, because I think it is the best version of a track that I never really cared about. So I want to be fair. I'm going to be as fair as I can with how much I don't really care for it, but I'm still going to put it in B tier because I think it deserves it. Moving on to our second tour track, we have Tokyo Blur. Tokyo Blur, I think, suffers a lot from, again, the aforementioned first track syndrome. It was the second Mario Kart Tour track to be introduced in the game overall. It's one of the 2 tracks to have its 4th variant in Tour released. And that's, I think, where we're going to start with the problems. We're going to start with the gameplay. Tokyo Blur, all 3 routes share way too much with each other. Basically speaking, the entire first area of the track is the same across all 3 routes. And even beyond that, routes 1 and 2 are almost completely identical, except you just go in different directions. With route 1, you take a left turn instead of a right, and you go about the large U-turn, and then it eventually just it doesn't take long for the 2 tracks to reconnect and just go in the same direction. They're really okay. Tokyo Blur almost kind of looks like a little rectangle. The top left-hand corner is the only thing that really changes between the first two routes. There is not much. And even the 3rd route follows a lot of the same route as Route 2, except instead of going towards the large red structure that I don't know the name of, you go up onto a large turnpike, which I'd argue is probably the most interesting part of this entire track. And that's not saying much, because it's just like you do a giant loop and it goes right towards the finish where you glide to the finish line. So with all 3 routes sharing way too much, I can't say that the gameplay is all that exciting. It does take the new concept of 1 route per lap. So Route 1 is lap 1, lap 2 is Route 2, lap 3 is Route 3. So nothing changes between all 3 routes on each lap, which I kind of respect because it lets you really get the best and the most of each individual route instead of taking all these new creative measures. Especially considering Tokyo Blur was one of the few tracks where all 3 routes go in the same direction, so there was nothing that needed to be changed. Overall, though, that's going to land a pretty bad 2 out of 5. The course itself, the layout just doesn't stand out. Too many parts of the track are shared between routes, so it doesn't seem all that interesting. So yeah. Visually, much like Paris Promenade, the building details kind of save it. The grass and the trees are, well, exactly what you would expect. They're the same. Really, everything I said about Paris Promenade can really apply to Tokyo Blur. So I think the visuals are going to be a 3 out of 10. And the music, music-wise, it's a lot like Toad Circuit, where it doesn't change too much from the original, which kind of feels like I can't say too much. So I'm going to have to go ahead and I'm going to put Tokyo Blur in the D tier. I don't really care for this track all that much, and a lot of its changes to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe don't really do it any benefit. It doesn't help it, it doesn't hinder it, it just feels like it's staying the same, except you're just playing 3 routes into 1 track. So yeah, I'm going to stick that in the D tier because it just doesn't stand out. It's not bad, but it definitely suffers from early track syndrome of Mario Kart Tour. Moving on to DS Shroom Ridge, the first DS track of the Booster Course Pass and the first track to officially make its retro debut in the past. Yeah. Despite the fact that it would have eventually been released a full year after it made its debut in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it made its debut in Tour a full year later. You can tell that it was still intended to be a Tour track. This is another one that really suffers visually, and we're going to start there. I know I'm kind of shifting between whether I start with gameplay or visuals, but we're going to start with visuals again. Unfortunately, Shroom Ridge is another kind of ugly track. I'd say that the visuals are kind of on par with Toad Circuit. It's pretty bad. There's a lot of grass and a lot of rock walls, so a lot of it just looks like paint and plasticine on an art project. And I don't want to compare it to the base game because we're now 5 waves in. We know this is coming, but compared to future waves, just doesn't stand out visually. Gameplay-wise, Shroom Ridge does not change at all from its original game, its original layout. Everything is pretty much the same. The traffic is still there. They take the cars from Toad's Turnpike, meaning that they have the additional surfboard car, which lets you do a trick off of it. I'd say that the gameplay is kind of a 3 out of 5 because I think one of the most fun things about this track is how many large turns there are. This is a perfect track to really practice your mini turbos, even with all the traffic in the way. Getting an ultra mini turbo is pretty easy on this track, and I very much enjoy it. Numerous times have I played this track where I just find myself getting really far ahead with or without items. And I just very much enjoy that. I love seeing how far I can get and seeing if I can almost just narrowly lap some people. Which, no, I can't on 150cc. Maybe if it was 200 I would, but I don't play 200 very often. So, gameplay-wise, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 because it's not bad. It's fun, but it doesn't really do much different. I guess there are the few additional shortcuts. They are fun. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, there's a fan out in the ravine on the cliff sides where you can dash out, hit the fan, and then jump, like skip a large turn. There's also the gliding ramp just before the tunnel, which is fun. Item boxes move, so getting a mushroom could either be, just in time for those shortcuts, could either be really easy or really hard based on the positioning of the item boxes. So I personally think it's fun, but I still think I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Those extra shortcuts just kind of justify the 1 point above just being a 2 out of 5. Music-wise, this one, I actually really like the music remix for Shroom Ridge. It feels like it tries to keep a large portion of its DS counterpart while still sounding a little bit more modern, which I really like. I thought that was really, really cool. I wouldn't say it's a pitch-perfect remix. I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because it's really good. This is probably the one remix I will come back to frequently when I listen to it on like my iPod. I think Shroom Ridge is the one that I constantly play. I think it's my favorite remix in the entire first wave. So I'm gonna, no, you know what? I think I'm gonna award it its first 5 out of 5. I think the remix is really, really good. Overall though, I think the gameplay not doing much and the visuals being the worst can't carry the music. The music cannot carry a track like that. I'm still going to go ahead and put this in the C tier though because I like the track and I think it's fun that we finally got, this was one of the last 5 DS tracks that haven't come back yet at the time. So it was fun to see our first track that has not made its debut yet, and I think that's what carries a little bit more of it. Even though we knew it was going to be in tour eventually, it was still nice to see, so I'm going to put it in the C tier. Time for me to talk about GBA Sky Garden. Oh man, this one hurts. This one hurts a lot. Sky Garden in Super Circuit was one of my favorite tracks of all time. Like, this was my OG favorite in the entire game. I think we all have. I don't talk to a lot of people and not hear the same thing. This track is washed up. It is so disappointing. And we're going to start with that, the gameplay. We're going to start with the gameplay this time. The layout was just butchered. I am so sad. Okay. One thing you have to know is that Mario Kart 64 and Mario Kart Super Circuit are my nostalgic Mario Kart games. I grew up on both of them. 64 was not only my first Mario Kart game, but it was also my first game overall. And Super Circuit was one of my very first GBA games on the very first system that I owned myself. I got a Game Boy Advance when I was 6. I think my parents got me Super Circuit and Super Mario World with it. And those two games are two of my favorites. And Super Circuit is just, it's so beautiful for a sprite-based GBA game. It was so colorful and vibrant. All the tracks popped out. Almost all of them. I loved Sky Garden in the original. Even in DS, it was better than this. The visuals can't carry this, sorry, very bad gameplay shift. The track has been watered down so much. Compressed a little too much. The entire the entire left side of the track does not look anything like its original incarnation. It's so disappointing. The simplified turns, the just bog standard U-turns, it just does not do it for me, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people actually feel the same way. I'm a part of a Discord server, and I talk every once in a while. I talk about it. I see a lot of people talk the same thing about Sky Garden. It just doesn't do it. It's so disappointingly watered down. It's got a few extra shortcuts to accommodate, but when compared to the original and how much more you can do in it, it's so disappointing, especially from someone who is very Super Circuit nostalgic. So I'm gonna let that win here and just say that Sky Garden's Reincarnation Tour and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was very disappointing. Visually, it does look really nice. Okay. The visuals do a lot more justice than the original. Having the extra giant beanstalks, all the extra clouds, the airships in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's version do look very, very nice. Some of the additional road textures are appealing, like having some grass, some flowers in there on top of sitting on all the clouds. I'm glad that they kept a large portion of the beanstalk, like rail-style roads. Those look really nice. Again, it is also a Wave 1 track, but I will give it the benefit of the doubt that it does look a lot better when compared to stuff, obviously, like the city tracks, Toad Circuit, and Shroom Ridge. I think it does look a lot better than those. However, again, I just can't get over the gameplay changes. Get rid of that. Music-wise, the music is okay. I don't really care if it's a jazz-style remix. I still kind of think that I don't even know how to describe the original music, but I will say it's only really better than, I don't even know if it's better than the DS version, but I like the tour version the most, and I still have to give the OG a little bit more credit, so music-wise, it's going to be a 3 out of 5. But I'm going to let my nostalgia win over on this one, because out of all the Super Circuit tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and even in Tour, this one disappoints me the most. So, sorry. I'm sorry to anybody who does like the new version. I'm sorry to myself, because this is literally still one of my favorite Super Circuit tracks. This is a D rank track. This is D. This can't climb any higher. For a track set in the sky, it hits pretty low. Moving on to our first Nitro Tour track. We have Tour, I still put the Tour prefix in front. We have Tour Ninja Hideaway, the final track of Wave 1. I think, so gameplay-wise, Ninja Hideaway was a very interesting track where it focused a lot on bottom and top routes. You can go in early in the mansion, you can choose to go up on a staircase that leads you above all those shuriken traps that were littered below, where it would lower a giant ceiling and try to spike you with some sharp shurikens, say that 5 times fast. Or you can go above and just ride above them all. Granted, since the floors did lower, you had a chance of getting dropped below anyway, especially on the last trap. But if you were lucky enough and the trap stayed up high enough for a long enough period of time, you can jump onto an upper floor, which was littered with a lot of coins, which in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe doesn't really mean as much, but in Mario Kart Tour, if you had a boomerang flower, that was going to earn you a lot of points. I don't know why I keep getting little notifications like that, I'm sorry for that. But gameplay-wise, Ninja Hideaway was really fun. My big problem with Ninja Hideaway is that it got overshadowed pretty fast by future Tour Nitro tracks that were not city-based. Ninja Hideaway, I think, was fun in the moment, but because it was in the first wave, I kind of got bored of it after a while, especially when new tracks like Yoshi's Island and even Squeaky Clean Sprint at this point. I'll get to Squeaky Clean Sprint later. But I just think that being one of the earliest ones, it suffers from that as well. It doesn't suffer nearly as much as Tokyo Blur or Paris Promenade do, but it definitely suffers from just kind of losing its luster over time. Visually, it's a bit of a mix. You can still tell that it's definitely just ripping textures right out from Tour. I'm looking at the wooden bridge on the little screenshot here, and I feel like they could have just put a little bit more of a wooden design on top of the color. I think that the visual overview just looks really nice. It's a giant Japanese-style castle. You got the cherry blossoms. You got some Shy Guy kites in the background. I think overall, the overall design of the track definitely outranks the poor visuals. So I think I'll give the visuals a 3 out of 5. I'm also gonna give a I'm gonna give a 3 out of 5 for the gameplay because I actually no 4 out of 5 because I forgot the gameplay. I like the difficulty. It's got some really sharp turns. I think that this is one of the, if we were to compare tour tracks to the standard track like cup layout, Ninja Hideaway would be an easy Star Cup course, and I think that's really respectable. Especially at the very end when you've got the spinning fans and those really sharp turns. I think it's overall quite a fun track, so I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Music-wise, I do very much enjoy the remix, especially. I think it's a lot more upbeat, a lot more intense when compared to the tour rendition, especially when you add in the front-running first-place beats. I think that this music is really good in tour, and it's one of I think just behind Shroom Ridge, it's one I come back to more frequently than most other ones. Overall, though, I think I'm gonna put this in the B tier. I don't see as you can plainly see, the Wave 1 tracks did not have what it takes to climb past B rank. Ninja Hideaway is still a very strong track, even if it did lose its luster from being in the game for so long. And especially when you compare it to some of the newer Nitro tracks, like for me personally, Piranha Plant Cove and Piranha Plant Pipeline are kind of a lot cooler and a lot more fun. But Ninja Hideaway, I still think is pretty strong. So we're gonna put it in B tier. Alright, we are moving on to Wave 2. This is gonna be even this. Yeah, it's a good thing I'm putting this into 2 parts. Wave 2 starts with Tour New York Minute. And I'd say it shares a lot of its problems with Tokyo Blur, but overshadows a lot of those problems with its different qualities. So let's start with the gameplay. It does the same thing that Tokyo Blur does in the fact that each lap is dedicated to one of the 3 routes in Mario Kart Tour. The only difference is that you can take a few different liberties, but it doesn't really make much of a difference. Much like Paris Promenade, you can go through a few of the different routes just when you exit out of Central Park, I believe it's called. So you could do some things different, but they don't really amount to much. Gameplay-wise, I just like New York Minute a little bit more than Tokyo Blur. It does share the same problem where a lot of its routes just go in the same areas. Routes 1 and 2 share that same problem where a grand portion of the track is shared between the 2 routes. So unfortunately, I can't really award it too many gameplay points. It is a little bit more exciting than Tokyo Blur with the geysers and the glider ramps. Tokyo Blur does not have too much that goes for it. So I'm going to give its gameplay a 3 out of 5. A little bit higher than Tokyo Blur because it still has a few more interesting bits to it. Visually, this is way better than Tokyo Blur. For a city track especially, it's going to suffer from a lot of the buildings just looking the same as in other areas, but I love the nighttime vibe. This course really captures New York very well with its bright environment, all the neon lights surrounding you, the giant buildings. I love that they made the roads wet and slippery now, thanks to all the erupting geysers, so I think that really does help with the lights reflecting off the road. While it does not capture Wave 2's improvements to the visuals as well as other tracks do, I still think that this is a very amazing visual track. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4 out of 5 because it just looks so nice. Once again, Central Park is a bit of a distraction with its grass and its trees, but the muggy looking dirt road does look kind of a little bit better. It kind of gives it the fact that it still is a wet road, it's just really wet, muddy dirt, so looks pretty cool. Music wise, again, it captures a New York feel. It's very, very upbeat. It's like almost like it's showy. It's like you're watching a musical, which makes sense because it does have those advertisements for the Donkey Kong the best musical, which you obviously never see because it's just an advertisement. But honestly, I almost could picture New York Minute's theme being the opening theme for a musical based on the original Donkey Kong. That just kind of popped into my mind, so I'm gonna go ahead. I have actually, because you can see that all the tracks are actually listed in a separate little tier belowhand, that means that I have actually already ranked these courses before. and I'm going to change it up. I originally had New York Minute in the B tier, but I'm going to go ahead and move it into the A tier because it's a very visually appealing track. It's got some really nice music. Sure, the gameplay doesn't do too much different, and it suffers a little bit from that, but I still do like New York Minute a little bit more. Call it a bias for being a big city boy. I love the big city. Could I live in the big city? No. I live quite close to Toronto, but I could not live in Toronto. I love visiting Toronto, though. New York is definitely not a city I would want to live in. It's probably arguably more dangerous than Toronto, but I love the big city. So I'm going to move it up a tier, call it a little bit of a present. Alright, moving on to our first SNES track of the DLC, we have SNES Mario Circuit 3. I believe that upon reveal, the reception for this track was not strong from others. Mario Circuit 3 is my favorite SNES track. I'm not going to let that get ahead of me because, well, no, you know what? I don't even need the fact that it's my favorite to bump it up. I don't think there's anything wrong with this track. I think that they did this track very well. Yes, a lot of people were comparing this to like Donut Plains 3 or SNES Rainbow Road or even some of the other GBA tracks, which were also flat in their original appearances. But I don't think SNES Mario Circuit 3 needed to go all out. I think this was a perfect track to just capture the OG feel. All of these tracks do their best to either visually change or gameplay change or do something to make it stand out a lot more, for the most part. Mario Circuit 3 kind of thrives on not doing that. It keeps the original layout, it keeps its original visuals, albeit lighted up a little bit. Even the background stays the exact same, which I think is fine. I always loved the SNES Mario Circuits, and I think out of all of them, while I would have loved to see SNES Mario Circuit 4 make its first reappearance, I'm quite content with Mario Circuit 3. Would have taken Mario Circuit 2. Basically, Mario Circuit 1's the only one I wouldn't have taken. But personally speaking, I think that there's nothing wrong with Mario Circuit 3. I don't think it needed to be changed. They added a little bit of extra details. They didn't even change the music. I think this was the one track in the DLC that I can satisfy with it being completely the same. I don't think it needed any change. So I'm going to go ahead and award it 4 out of 5 for its visual. 4 out of 5 across the board. I'm just going to give it a 4 out of 5 across the board because I never really disliked anything about the Mario Circuit tracks. And personally, the lighting of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe makes the course a lot more colorfully vibrant with the colorful block walls, the sand, the road, the background, all the extra little details. I know it's not an interesting track. It's a SNES track. They didn't do anything to change it, and I can understand why people would be disappointed at that, especially when Donut Plains 3 did receive a lot more of a visual overhaul compared to its original incarnations. But considering that the Booster Course Pass is not aiming to rival the base game, I think it's okay in this case because Mario Circuit 3 is just it's OG. So I'm going to go ahead and just put it in the A tier. I know a lot of people might disagree with me on that, but Mario Circuit 3 has always been one of my favorites. I always loved the visuals. I always loved, especially for Mario Circuit 3, a lot of drifting opportunities. I loved this track back in Mario Kart Wii especially. That's where it became my favorite. Having so many opportunities to practice your drifts really made this track a lot of fun. So I'm going to stand by my love for this track. I'm not going to put it in the S rank because at the same time it is still a flat OG SNES track. It doesn't bring too much to the table, but everything about this track, how it just captures its original feel, I have to respect that, and I'm going to put it in the A tier. Alright, Calamari Desert, another OG N64 track, a personal favorite for a lot of people. I don't know or talk to too many people who have played the OG Mario Kart 64, but I know, personally speaking, this is one of my favorites, and my brother personally loves this track as well. I'm going to go ahead and rank this one first. This is our first S rank track. I originally was thinking that this would have been an A rank track, but I gave it a lot more thought, and I have to put it in the S rank. So gameplay-wise, that's where this track shines a lot. if anybody has played Mario Kart Tour, you would know that there are actually 2 variations of Calamari Desert. The OG, and then they added a new reroute called Calamari Desert 2, which is a sectional based track that allows you to drive onto the train tracks as a part of the track itself. Never before has it been mandatory to drive on the train tracks. You could drive on the train tracks in Mario Kart 64, but because it was treated as off-road, it didn't really help you all that much. In Mario Kart 7, I don't think you could enter the tunnel like you could in Mario Kart 64, so they really negated a lot more of it. Not, again, like it mattered, because you never needed to go on the tracks. Calamari Desert 2 was the first one to make it mandatory to go on the tracks, to make it a part of the track itself, and that was super cool. And they took it and they merged both versions perfectly. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Lap 1 was dedicated entirely to the OG N64 Calamari Desert. You could optionally go on the tracks in the at the first crossing, but I personally like to just keep it OG. In the second lap, you start out going normally, and then you go right onto the train tracks through a large red railing road like you would in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or Mario Kart Tour, meaning that you take the original N64 Calamari Desert 2 route and you start going on the train tracks, making the train an extra big hazard because you are going against it. That train is coming at you. Stay on the side of the road and you'll be fine. If you're driving on the tracks, well, I really hope you enjoy getting up close and personal with a giant locomotive. Otherwise, there is only one train, so the gameplay difficulty does get scaled down a little bit, but that train moves pretty fast. I think faster than every other incarnation. Once you go through the tunnel, starting the third lap, you go right over, you still keep going right along the tracks, and then you go right back onto the desert road and you go right to the finish line. The way they merged these 2 versions of Calamari Desert was masterful. And I think I don't give it enough credit for that. I think it's amazing, and I have to give the gameplay a 5 out of 5 for that, for taking creative liberties of taking a track that they probably wouldn't have put in this game otherwise, and effectively putting in this game. Calamari Desert in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, while it's not combining 2 separate individual tracks, it's combining the 2 routes that really I didn't think they would do. So I'm quite glad that they did. And being a fan favorite N64 track always works too. So I have to give it a 5 out of 5 for its gameplay. Visually, this track definitely started to prove that they were doing a little bit more to improve. The road looked much better, even compared to the Wave 1 tracks. The sandy roads and off-road look a lot better. Yes, you still got a lot of the distracting cliffs, which I'm going to have to demote one little point to that. But the extra warp pipes on some of the mesa structures, the overall textures look a lot better. The cacti textures, I think, visually, I'm going to have to give this a 4 out of 5. I think it was really strong, especially with the sunset lighting. Looked amazing. Music-wise, I think this is another really good remix. I'm not going to say it's as strong as some of the other ones. I think it's fair to say that this is also a 4 out of 5 on the music scale. I love the remix. I know a lot of people were disappointed that the whistling portions of the track music were removed, but I think the trumpets really did. They sounded just as good. So I think the music was amazing. And thus, I'm still awarding Calamari Desert as our first S-ranked track. Not just because it's a favorite, but I think they built it up really well. Alright, moving on to another big fan favorite, we have Waluigi Pinball. This is probably, if you talk to people about Mario Kart DS, if you're not hearing Airship Fortress, you're hearing Waluigi Pinball. You're hearing a lot of those 2 tracks. So Waluigi Pinball first reappeared in Mario Kart 7, where in Mario Kart 7, I think it picked up the 4 of the most popular DS tracks, and Waluigi Pinball reappeared in Mario Kart Tour alongside all 3 of the other 7 DS tracks. And then this one popped right back up in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as a part of the Booster Course Pass. And much like Coconut Mall, it's not one of my personal favorite DS tracks. Unlike Coconut Mall, I do still like it a lot more. And like Coconut Mall, I think this is the best iteration of Waluigi Pinball we have ever seen. The extra details in Tour made this track so much more colorful, especially on the pinball table section, where now it's all neon lit. All of the extra details on the giant Waluigi standee in the background with the slot machines, the neon lights. It's like, this is a Vegas track. This is how you get Las Vegas into Mario Kart Tour without making a Las Vegas track. Who cares? I like it. So, Waluigi Pinball, visually I think has to be a 5 out of 5. Even, like, the road textures, they had almost this carpet look to them. The shiny metal railings, the pinball section really pops. I think visually this is a phenomenal looking track. The spotlights, the night theme, the pinballs reflecting all the background. I think, again, I can't gush about the visuals enough. It's a very visually nice track. Gameplay wise, doesn't change much from any other iteration. The track layout stays the same. Once again, I do respect that, but there is a lot of chaos with this track with all the pinballs flying around. So it is a challenging track, even for a Flower Cup course, I gotta say, pretty challenging. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 though, because I like this track, but I'm not gonna buy into the same hype that everybody else throws at it. It's a cool pinball style concept. I still like, again, for me personally, the DS tracks did not leave too much of a lasting impression on me. And like, while Waluigi Pinball is the best it's ever been, I never really resonated with the DS tracks nearly as much. And unfortunately, I can't grade the music. Oops. Waluigi Pinball stands out as it's the only track in the entire game to share a music theme with another track. And that's because DS Wario Stadium also is in the game, and it was base game. So while it is using a fresh remix that was introduced in Mario Kart 8 as a whole, which means that music-wise it kind of gets a little bit of a step up, I can't really grade it on that. It's kind of hard to grade it because it's not using a theme that's new to the game. It's reusing a theme that was already in the game. And being the only one to do that, I don't know. I just can't, I'm afraid I can't grade the music. But overall, I think what I've said, this is another track. It was originally a B-rank track because, again, no, you know what? I think, unfortunately, because it doesn't receive a new rendition of music, even if they never have done that in the past, I think a much more pinball-y, showy feel to the music would have been cooler. Like, this could have been also the first track to receive a new remix in the same game that it already had its music available. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to keep this at a B tier. Waluigi Pinball is still a great track, but the lack of what they could have done with the music, plus the fact that it's still reusing music, plus the fact that it's not really a DS track that really resonated with me, I can't let the visuals pull it up so high. Like, I know I kind of let that happen with New York Minute, and arguably, maybe this track to some people even looks better than New York Minute, but New York Minute is kind of a little bit more interesting with how many different routes it has and all the different options. So, I'm sorry to Waluigi Pinball fans, but I think Waluigi Pinball is going to have to sit at a B. Moving on to our next Tour City track, we have Sydney Sprint, which honestly was one of those tracks in Tour that really popped out when it was first revealed. So let's start with the visuals this time. This track is a very open, actually I'm not going to say very colorful. I'm going to be real. The visuals on this track are okay. They aren't as bad as other tracks, but they aren't as good as other tracks either, especially once you reach the second lap when you're racing through the large grassy sections. The buildings definitely don't stand out too much. I think the visuals are just kind of 3 out of 5 so far because on one hand, a lot of it does seem a little bog standard, nothing really stands out, but on the other hand, you got like the Opera House, you got the big amusement park, and I thought those were really cool. So, plus the road is, well, it's a road. It's got the same road design as most other city tracks, so visually I think this one sits right in the middle. it's the gameplay that really does shift things up a little bit. So Sydney Sprint takes more of its inspiration from Paris Promenade, where each lap is a different layout, really. So lap 1 does the standard and follows Route 1 in its entirety. Sydney Sprint 1 is played out in its entirety. You go through the Opera House, which is really cool. It's a small little section, but it's so cool that you just race right through it. It's just so cool. And then you glide right out and you're immediately greeted by a large amusement park, which for me, what captured it was the giant 2D artwork of Yoshi and Toad, which I absolutely loved. Then you reach a big suspension bridge, which has a train driving past it, which in the 8 Deluxe version, Toads just throw coins, but a big thing about that was changed about the suspension bridge was the large ramps that were added in the dead center of it. These ramps mean absolutely nothing in lap 1 because they're facing in the opposite direction, and you're going the original way. So Route 1 makes those ramps more of an obstacle than anything else because you can drive under them, but you still gotta watch out for the ramps posts that hold them up. So you got a little bit to watch out for. Other than that, you go right down to what I would assume to be a little highway that leads all the way back down to the starting line. Then you go on to lap 2, which immediately starts going on to the route of Sydney Sprint 3, which at the time was not released, so this was completely brand new. It drives all the way through a large grassy park section. I don't really, again, pardon the fact that I don't know very much about the names of the landmarks and stuff. Other than that, that's once you exit the park section, it's a bit of a windy area, but it's not bad. It's pretty challenging to practice your drift. You get some drift practicing there. You might go off-road a few times because it gets a little twisty, but you exit out and then you start going down to the suspension bridge area, which is where the ramps become usable. You go right up the ramps, you can jump up and down them, all that jazz. And once you've reached the end of the suspension bridge, you start going down the route of Sydney Sprint 2, which is in its original direction. So you go down this other little serpentine grassy area, and then you glide to the in-between of the Opera House before just heading right back to the finish line. And uniquely, the last lap is Sydney Sprint 1 in its entirety. Sydney Sprint 1 reverse. So it is the only track that I can remember off the top of my head. Oh wait, no, there's 2. It's the first track that takes one route's reverse version and plays it out in its entirety. So overall, its gameplay is a little bit more interesting when compared to the other tracks. And I think it does a little bit more than, well, I don't even know. I'd say it's pretty even to Paris Promenade. It's got a reverse route. It's got its first route. It's kind of even. It does some different things, but I'd say those different things even out to what Paris Promenade does. I still think that the more popping visuals are a little bit better than Paris Promenade, so I think this has what it takes to rank a little higher. The music is another one of those really good ones. Like, I think this one's so much more... I don't really know what the word is for it, but it's a lot more energetic when compared to the original. It's super catchy. I absolutely love it. The music is easily a 5 out of 5. I think the visuals are a 3 out of 5, and the gameplay is also a 3 out of 5. This was originally one that I had ranked as an A rank course, but when I think about it, as much as I really do enjoy it, as big as it is, I think I'm going to have to move it down to B. I still very much like this track, and I think it's one of the stronger tour tracks, but the more I think about it, I also think that this is definitely a track that kind of just hits the middle ground. I think this is, out of all Tour City tracks, this is one of them that sits in the dead middle. Moving on to GBA Snowland. In stark contrast to Sky Garden, Snowland does keep a large, basically all of its original layout. Snowland does a new thing that Tour does frequently with its GBA tracks, and that is compresses it greatly. The original layout is still there, but it's much more compressed. The roads are all, like, it's all kind of squished together instead of being one big open area with thinner roads. I am very glad that it kept its original layout. That was very nice, and the new elevation differences are very nice as well. I'd say my biggest disappointment was the large I don't even know if I want to call it a shortcut. From the diagonal section, there in the original there was a large L-shaped turn that you could take instead. It had a lot of boost panels on it. It's not a huge big deal that it was removed, but I think it's a little bit disappointing. The visual details are definitely a lot, like I love that they kept the original snow crystal background. So like that's nice, they got a nice little new purple hue from the sky. Unfortunately from visuals it is distracted by the rock walls, but a lot of that is overshadowed by the fact that the snow takes a lot of its visual appearance from the 8 Deluxe textures, which makes it look a lot nicer. The road is now an actual road as opposed to what would assume to be like reflective sheet of ice that Mario Kart Super Circuit had and Mario Kart Tour had. So I think it was really nice, the road design. I have no preference on whether or not it's the sheet of ice. Well, actually I do. I kind of like the icy design better in Super Circuit and Tour, but I think that the road is very nice. The large C-like U-turn in the center of the track is now greeted with a giant pool of ice in the middle, or a pool of icy water in the middle, which you can obviously fall into. Penguins will pop out, you can wipe out from the penguins, so they act as a nice new little hazard. All the new details, I think this is a very strong GBA remake. Do I like it more than the original? It's hard to say because, again, I'm very nostalgic for the GBA game. So it's really hard for me to say if I like it more or less. But I think that overall, I'm gonna give this an A. I think the visuals are nice. The music is a really nice new remix. It adds a little bit more, which is unusual because the original track, it just went straight into the music. This one has a little bit of a new opener to it, and I think that's really cool. It's very nice. So, the music is nice. The music I'll give a 4 out of 5. The visuals I think I'll give a 4 out of 5 as well. And the gameplay I'll give a 4 out of 5. Yeah, this is a 4 out of 5 across the board. I'm not as satisfied with it as I could have been, but I think it's a very nice track overall. It was the second track to make its a retro debut in the past alongside Shroom Ridge, and I think it's going to probably be the last one unless Wave 6 holds any further surprises. Alright, moving on to another Wii classic. We have Wii Mushroom Gorge, another track that has seen a large number of appearances. So, much like a lot of Tour tracks, this was also in Mario Kart 7. Tour took a lot of Mario Kart 7's tracks to begin with. So we're at the point where every single Tour or 7 retro track is in Mario Kart Tour, and pretty much literally every Wii track that was in 7 is now also in 8 Deluxe, and Mushroom Gorge is one of them. Visually, I'm going to start with the visuals. Definitely a step up. Like the color scheme of this track really pops out. I like how the roads kind of got a more orangey brown look. And I think it looks really nice when compared to the much more lighter green that the grass has. On top of the colorful mushroom colors, you got the blue. For the glider in the cave, you got the red and the green mushroom. The layout does not change too much, but what I do want to give a special mention to is how the inner cave section with all the giant mushrooms, they kind of merged all 3 versions of it. You've got the layout and elevations of Mario Kart Wii. You've got the gliding mushroom of Mario Kart 7, along with the overall visual feel of Mario Kart Tour. The blue mushroom was actually placed in between both routes, where if you start going on the top route, you can hit the blue mushroom and glide your way out, or you can keep going along the big mushroom routes and just drive right out. Because I know, in fact, in Mario Kart Tour and Mario Kart 7, I believe the blue mushroom was the end of the top route. So it was nice to see that they brought back the mushroom layout from Mario Kart Wii, giving you the option to bounce on the mushrooms leaving the cavern instead of just hitting the gliding ramp. Music-wise, the music is actually almost nearly identical to its original rendition, with a few additional instruments added here and there. I like the little flute that they added near the end of the music. So I think it strengthens it, but overall, Mushroom Gorge does have a very catchy tune, and I do like it. I'd say, overall, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the A rank. Much like Coconut Mall, I'm not too huge on just buying into the hype of all the popular tracks. Most of my favorite tracks are either, I will admit, one of them is a popular fan favorite, but I'm going to be 100% real with you. Daisy Circuit and Dry Ruins are two of my favorite tracks in Wii, and I like them a lot more, considerably a lot more, than both Coconut Malt and Mushroom Gorge. I know that might not seem like much, but, like, I just like them more. It's a personal opinion. I know, it's one of those things. Moving on to Sky High Sunday. Oh, I guess I should, I don't remember if I finished, but Mushroom Gorge, sorry. Mushroom Gorge, I'm going to give the gameplay a 4 out of 5. The visuals a 4 out of 5. Again, another 4 out of 5 across the board. So next up, we have Sky High Sunday. A new track that was the first Tour Nitro track to make its debut in the past. So this one hits that really tricky concept of, is it a deluxe track? Is it a tour track? I know a lot of people have their thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and say mine. I've said it many times before. I treat that as a tour track first for many reasons. One, much like unlike Yoshi's Island and Squeaky Green Sprint, there wasn't anything that hinted at this being in Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart Tour first. However, given the pattern with the other two and the fact that this pass still did promote this as all 48 tracks being from past games, as well as how much tour attention this track gets, or this pass gets, I think it's safe to say that this was definitely intended to be a tour first, but the Booster Course pass just kind of changed that. So again, I'm considering this a tour track. It's not a strong tour track. Gameplay-wise, I don't want to really say it, but it's an oval. This is literally just Baby Park and Excite Bike Arena, but with jumps, a lot of jumps. It's just an oval with gaps in between. It's a more interesting oval, sure, but it's still just an oval. But I am going to give it credit, it's a more interesting oval than both the other ovals. So gameplay-wise, it's a little bit more fun, but that's a 3 out of 5 at best. This is not a 4 out of 5, not a 5 out of 5. This is a 3 out of 5 because it's an oval with gliding jumps and jumps. Visually wise, this is a really tasty looking track. I'm telling you right now, I love the ice cream look. I'm not really, I don't eat frozen treats frequently, but this track does make my mouth water. Like all the colorful ice cream looks, like I just love it all. That's a 4 out of 5. You know what? No, you know what? I'm gonna let my stomach do the talking. This is a 5 out of 5 on the visual design. I love the blue ice cream road. I wonder what that would taste like. The pink ice cream, all the colorful ice creams. I would love to figure out what all these taste like. I'm looking at the screenshot and that giant green popsicle looks really tempting. Music-wise, I wasn't a huge fan of the music. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of... It's catchy after the beginning, but overall, I think the music is a 2 out of 5. Combined with the gameplay, like the visuals can't carry it. This is a C track. I'm gonna put it in the C tier. As tasty as it is, and as cool as it was for being new, I think it lost its luster really fast when people realized it's not really all that exciting of a track. Alright, moving on to the last wave for this video. We are into wave 3, and we are starting with London Loop. I think my favorite thing about London Loop is how big it is. This is a massive track. Like, this could fit as a special cup opener if it was put into, like, traditional Mario Kart cups. London Loop is huge. It's got a lot of different pathways, and unlike the other 3 tracks, not a lot of its track routes share too much. I'd say even Route 1 and 2 are kind of still a little bit guilty, but even not that much. Because Route 2 immediately starts going into the park just up ahead, and doesn't, well, I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't share too much with Route. Yeah, I'm gonna say that London Loop was the first one where none of its routes share too much. It's still kind of got that early game syndrome where it's not too interesting to race on, it's just a big track. Chain chomps are about the most you'd have to worry about in this game, in this track, and it's like they're too few and far between. Gameplay wise though, I still think it's a lot of fun given how big it is and how many options there are. It was the first track to introduce routes that, okay, not routes, roads, because all 3 of London Loop's routes were revealed and released at this point, unlike Sydney Sprint where an entire route wasn't revealed at that point. But in this case, And no, in the first route, you can choose to go inside that building area, or you could go to the side, which was not accessible in the original. So this is the first one to introduce little roads that weren't in any of the routes in the original version, which I thought was pretty cool. So I'm gonna, because I'm unfortunately, as much as I want to give this a 4 out of 5, I'm probably gonna have to give this a 3 out of 5 in terms of its gameplay, because as much as I love how big the track is, that doesn't really do much for the track itself. I think it's really cool how a lot of the, I'll get into that with the visuals, but I'm gonna say the gameplay is a 3 out of 5. Visually, much like every other city track, it still kind of feels a lot of the same. I love that I think it captures the England feel very well. It captures that London English feel very well. I love all the, some of the flag, like the London England flag is there. I'm gonna once again apologize if I butcher any sort of cultural references here, because I'm not very culturally knowledgeable. But I think the London Loop's atmosphere is very nice. I love it. They went from a daytime setting to a more cloudy, overcast setting, which I almost feel like, I've never been to London, I don't know much about London, but something about it just feels like it fits. Just call it a hunch. So I'm gonna give the visual style a 4 out of 5, even though it's not too huge or too changing. I love the environment. I think the environment's really cool. And I'm also going to give the music 5 out of 5, because I think this is another really strong music piece. It didn't do it for me at first, but as I listened to it more, I grew much more fond of it. This music piece grew on me so fast. So as much as I'm gushing over it though, I'm going to put it in the A rank, because I still don't think that the gameplay can cover that much over its more aesthetic differences or strengths. I think when I rank these, the gameplay has to really, really outshine a lot of the other areas. Like, the music alone can't carry, and the visual alone can't carry. So, as we probably made it clear. Moving on to GBA Boo Lake. This is another S rank track. I'm gonna put it right up there. Boo Lake, I think, received some of the best glow-ups out of any GBA track for its time. Because a few others, I think, really did capture some good vibes, but they're not in the Booster Course Pass. So, we are stuck talking about how amazing Boo Lake was. I don't remember, I think Boo Lake was one of those tracks that was data mined shortly before, or well before its release in either one. The music prefetch data mine did reveal Boo Lake's music. At the time, obviously, a lot of people were like, is it Boo Lake? Is it Broken Pier? We don't know yet, but it turns out it was Boo Lake. And it did debut in Tour first. Boo Lake is amazing. I think that this track is a very good track on all fronts. Starting with the gameplay, in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, they turned the entire broken boardwalk section into an anti-gravity area. Starting with the large sloping upward section, it becomes anti-gravity, and once it hits underwater, I swear everything gets so great. I think the dilapidated boardwalk section looks fantastic. It's all sunk below the lake. By the way, Boo Lake finally has a lake now. Everyone pointed this out already, but in the original, Boo Lake was just over a bottomless void. It didn't have any water whatsoever. Now we have water, and it's great for it. Nintendo does their water so well. I know I'm talking about both their gameplay and their visuals at the same time, but let's go for it. I'm getting a little messy now. Who cares? Boo Lake, gameplay and visually, is phenomenal. I'm going to award a 5 out of 5 for both of them. Visually, the water, the moonlight, sure, you got some of those tour rocks in the background, but I don't care right now. The track itself is amazing. You can see algae growing on some of the boardwalk or the wooden roads because it's wet, surrounded by water. The underwater section is so cool and fun. They did remove that extra bit from the tour version, probably because it was unnecessary. You didn't need it. That extra boardwalk section was only used in the 3 variants that weren't in 8 Deluxe. But they did keep some of the broken parts of it to show that it was there. So that's so cool. Music-wise, it's a step up from the original. I think all the additional instruments, all the new details. I think this music is a 4 out of 5. It's, because like even with the front running beats, it's so good. So I think this is so far our highest ranking overall track. Boo Lake is phenomenal. I think it's amazing. It is definitely one of the strongest tracks in the Booster Course Pass, and better yet, it's a GBA track. Finally, I got some repercussions from the last few. Moving on to 3DS Rock Mountain, we're dropping a significant amount from this one. Rock Mountain is this wave's equivalent to Toad Circuit. The visuals are boo. Too many rock walls with absolutely no detail to them. I think Rock Mountain, what makes it even worse is that even in Mario Kart 7, even in Mario Kart Tour, this track received absolutely nothing to improve upon it. And I think the big problem with that is because Rock Mountain was a base game tour track, where almost every single track was directly ported from Mario Kart 7 with just some more toury, cartoony visuals applied to them. So Rock Mountain not only suffers from being a very visually boring track by Mario Kart 8 Deluxe standards, it also suffers from being a very visually boring track by Tour standards. They didn't add anything to make this track interesting. They have the little mountains in the background and the sky, clouds, and that's it. They didn't do anything to this track. Music-wise, it's better. I like the music a little bit better. Even that doesn't change too much. So this is going to be one of those tracks where I believe I'm going to even shift this around from what I originally had it. Originally speaking, this was a C rank track. This is going to be our third D rank track. The more I think about it, the more I think Rock Mountain does not bring anything interesting to the table. I was really hoping we could have gotten something more interesting like 3DS Wario's Shipyard. Or Rosalina's Ice World. I would have taken that over this. Wario's Shipyard probably would have been the best case scenario. But we didn't. And we got Rock Mountain. And we got a boring track in return. So, I'm sorry, that's a D. There's nothing about this track that serves as interesting. On the other hand, we are now moving on to another Wii fan favorite being Maple Treeway. One of the biggest early shocks and surprises and twists that the Booster Course Path brought. Fun fact is that Wii Maple Treeway was originally slated to be for the 6th wave. We got this track really early, and it did show that Nintendo was probably aware of all the data mines, and they decided, well, we better shuffle things up to keep this interesting. So we got Maple Treeway at the end of the Rock Cup, and this is, I'm gonna admit, the track that is one of my personal favorites. This is the track that kind of bypasses my I don't want to buy into the hype kind of thing. But that's because this was probably one of my favorites as early as I've known Mario Kart Wii. Maple Treeway takes place on a giant maple tree, and I thought that was so cool. I always compare Mario Kart Wii to being the home console equivalent to Mario Kart Super Circuit, where all of its tracks were just super strong in their visual designs, their music, everything about their tracks was amazing. And Maple Treeway really is no different. I have to give Maple Tree credit for what it's worth, and the credit that it's due. It's still not an S-rank track for me though. The visuals are definitely a big step up. I love that they made it a lot more whimsical for Tour. I think the Tour visuals are the best visual appearance of this track. Maple Treeway in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is effectively a best of every version. It's got it brings back the half pipes from Mario Kart Wii. It keeps the really good gliding implementations made in Mario Kart 7, and it keeps the very good visual design of Mario Kart Tour. Music-wise, I kind of prefer the original music, but I'm going to give the gameplay a 4, the visuals a 4, and the music a 4. So this is a solid A-rank track. It's another 4-4-4 across the board, because everything about it is just so strong. It's just, by default, it was one of Mario Kart Wii's most appealing tracks. And I have to give it credit for what it is, because it is still one of my personal favorite Wii tracks. Moving on to Berlin Byways. Yes! I am so glad we got this early. I love this track. It's not my favorite tour track. It's my second favorite tour track. I think I'm going to save it, but I think you already might know where I'm going to end up putting this. I'm going to try my best to contain myself and save the best for last. So let's talk about the visuals. Unfortunately, I think the visuals are just, it's bog standard City. It's really, it's not that much. It's like comparable to Sydney Sprint. It's comparable to New York Minute. It's comparable to almost every other. It's comparable to New York, London Loop. So visually speaking, it's probably a 3 or 4. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a. I'm gonna give it a 3. I can't show too much favoritism. It's not too strong on its visuals, but that doesn't matter because gameplay-wise, it is so much fun. The routes do not intersect too much. Every route, like routes 2 and 3 are maybe the only ones that share too much, but even then, Route 3 does go a bit different in the fact that it goes into different directions. Route 2 being the first route that was introduced, I personally see that they treat Route 2 as the first route because unlike every single other tour track thus far, Berlin Byway's first lap is not based on its first route, it's based on its second route, which leads me to believe that Route 2 really is supposed to be Route 1. But I'm still going to call it Route 2, and it's really fun because it goes through a train station, you can even drive in the train, and you can drive through, it's like, honestly, the route layouts are so much fun. This track is also very challenging, much like London Loop, it's quite big, it's just a little bit more compact in comparison. You're still driving through a lot of the same areas, but you go through so many different areas with all the traffic involved. It's super challenging. I'd say that this is another easy special, of course, and I love it for it. So I'm going to give its gameplay a 5 out of 5, and that's how much I love it. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The music is what makes this track amazing. This music, 5 out of 5. No. 6 out of 5 music. No doubt about it. This music is the best soundtrack music in the entire tour. Tour's version of Berlin Byways threw me off guard because originally I was like, Vancouver Velocity has the best music, changed my mind. And then Berlin Byways slapped me so hard across the face, I was forced to say there was nothing that was supposed to beat Vancouver Velocity, and it did. I am not going to hide the fact that the music for this track carries so much of it. It is the best music in Mario Kart Tour, and it is probably my 3rd favorite music piece in the entire Mario Kart franchise. The Mario Kart 8 Deluxe remix sounds amazing, and it is one of the only ones that I consistently listen to on my iPod. Like, I can't bypass that track without listening to it. I think that the way I'm speaking hides nothing. Doesn't matter if the visuals don't hold up. This is an S-rank track easily for me. This might be the biggest case of my favorite being pulling it up, but I can't hide it. The music beats my own ranking system, and it's probably going to be the only one that does so. Calming down and moving on to DS Peach Gardens. This was one of the 2 tracks that was revealed long before the Wave's full trailer, and Peach Gardens is just kind of an average track for me. I'm going to give it a little bit more on the gameplay section where they did something unnecessarily extra that was greatly appreciated, and they turned the last lap into a reverse lap. They opened up a hedgeway at the very beginning of the track that is normally closed off in every other version, DS, Wii, Tour, none of this has this detail. They opened up a hedgeway that leads to a brand new road that they added in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that leads right back to the castle, or I guess the house, the manor, whatever it's called, and you start going in the track in reverse. So this is the only classic course that I'm aware of, or retro course, that implements its reverse version into it that's not a city track, and is the only retro track to add this new element. And I love it. So I'm going to give the gameplay a solid 4 out of 5. The new addition is really cool, and it does show that they were trying a little bit harder on these future wave tracks to make them a little more interesting. Music-wise, it's catchy, but Peach Gardens' music is average. I'm going to give it a 3. Same with the visuals. I think the new details added to Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart Tour are really nice. The hedged, actually no, you know what? I'm gonna give the visuals a 4 out of 10, a 5, because all the character-shaped hedges from Mario to Peach to Luigi to the Toads, really cool. They did add a giant piranha plant in the large circular section leading up to the mansion, so that's pretty cool. So, but overall though, I'm gonna put Peach Gardens in the B tier. I think it deserves it. It's not as bad, it's not a C tier track, but it doesn't climb up to A because I was never really too fond of the track. Quickly before, I apologize if you keep seeing me bring up another window, it's because I'm trying to remember where I put my tracks in the original layouts. So, I'll try to cut as most of that as I can. Moving on to our second to last track for the video, we have Merry Mountain. The second Tour Nitro track to be released in Tour. Tour Merry Mountain is it's the Christmas themed track. It looks like it's inspired by the idea of Santa's workshop with a giant present tower, all the giant presents laying around, the little festive village at the bottom. I almost compare this to almost being based off the North Pole, which obviously is not the case because the last time I checked, the North Pole either looks a lot like Ice Ice Outpost, which sucks ass, or it's just a lot of snow and ice. This is just a better version. It's kind of like a fictional version of the North Pole, which I really respect. Is the track all that special? Not really. I think the theming is amazing, but the track overall, the gameplay is a 3 out of 5 for me. I'm going to give the visuals and the overall environment a 4 out of 5 because I love the festive village. I love that almost like that like mining almost area mountain section that leads up to the mountain. And of course how festive the present tower and the Christmassy feel, it's so amazing. The extra anti-gravity section was pretty cool as well. The music I don't really care for either. Tour's music was either a hit or miss, or it was Berlin Byways, which is really in a league of its own at this point. So I think the music is also a 3, and overall I'm going to put this in the B tier as well, because visually it's really nice, but again, the visuals carry it a little bit higher when compared to the C rank tracks. Even Sky High Sunday, even if Sky High Sunday had that 5 out of 5 visuals, everything else did not carry it nearly as far as Merry Mountain did. And I think we're going to end this off on one of the most obvious things I could do. 3DS Rainbow Road, not going to hide it, is the last S-rank track for this video. No doubt about it. This track is beautiful. This is easily a 5 out of 5 across the board. Everything. Visuals. It is the best looking track out of all the tracks in the first 3 waves. Beating out Boo Lake so easily. Everything about this track was phenomenally beautiful in terms of its visuals. The road design was beautiful. The fact that we don't have to look at a single stupid rock or stupid tree. There's no grass. We don't have any of those overly distracting portions of off-road that make tracks kind of look a little bit cheaper. This track looks like they went all out. The brand new space design, I think the only thing I could possibly complain about was Saturn's rings, and I don't care about that. Not when compared to the visual design of the road, the background, the music is such a great remix. The gameplay, well, I do prefer 3 laps as opposed to 3 sections. This massive track is still a beauty to look at, and it's a beauty to play on. They got the anti-gravity on the moon. It is a bit of a missed opportunity that the anti-gravity didn't last longer for any other portion that really probably could have been used near the very end. But I have to go ahead and say that 3DS Rainbow Road is one of the strongest tracks in this entire Booster Course pass so far, without a doubt. And thus, we have the first part of my DLC ranking system. This is what it is so far. As you can see, our S rank has got Calamari Desert, Boo Lake, Berlin Byways, and Rainbow Road. And then obviously our E rank track is Toad Circuit, and I don't see that changing. But let me know what you guys think of this ranking system so far. The next part will not come out until after Wave 6 releases, which I don't even know when this video will go up because I'm going to be recording all the gameplay for it. So whenever this video goes up, I hope you guys all enjoy it. Let me know what your picks are. What do you think are your S rank tracks? What are your E rank tracks? Let me know down in the comments below. I would be glad to strike some productive discussions. I will not argue, obviously, with anybody else's opinion. If you guys sit there and think that Berlin Biowave sucks and that the music is bad, that's okay. If you guys think Rainbow Road, 3DS's Rainbow Road is disappointing, that's okay too. If you guys think that the Toad Circuit is unfairly suffering down there, let me know. It's not going to change my opinion, but I'm always open to listen to what everybody has to say. And I will respect all your opinions, don't you worry. As for now, this has been my ranking system. We will pick this up after Wave 6 releases, so I hope you guys look forward to that. Please hit that subscribe button if you want to see more Mario Kart Tour or Mario Kart content like this. Let me know. I do have lots of more Mario Kart video plans. They might not come out for some time, but I do have a lot more planned for Mario Kart. So I hope you guys look forward to that. Leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.